Pull myself. Hi. All right. I'm going to refresh my Facebook feed. Oop, that's not Facebook. I just clicked on something to make sure I see our faces. I do. That's not Facebook. I see our faces. Hi. Good morning, Sarah.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
I'm realizing this says Astro Forecast 5-7. It's not.
Yeah. It's not. It's not. No.
Let's get that out of the way right away. But that's not the case. I wonder.
I
wonder if I can edit it, but I don't think I can. No. I know Sarah sometimes edits it, but I'm not super duper worried about it.
It's fine.
Yes. So we can always just whatever. It's good. So this is not the astro forecast for 5-7. It's the astro forecast for 5-17.
17.
So
there's a missing one. Yeah. So
here it is. So good morning, everybody. As you probably know, I'm Anna, the co-founder here at the Sisters Enchanted. This is our week ahead astro forecast, and I am joined today with Sarah Milne, who is a co-teacher with me in our Exhibition Astrology program, and Team Sisters Enchanted team member extraordinaire. Good morning, Sarah.
Hey, how you all doing?
So I think because we've introduced ourselves every week so far, I think that we can just jump right in to what's happening. So we've got some Sun trine.
Yeah, there's some interesting trines and interesting squares up this week. So on Monday, and this is going to last through to Wednesday. So from Monday to Wednesday, we have Sun trine Pluto, which, as we know, Pluto is the planet of transformation and depth. It's kind of it does bring this deep energy. So we're going to have some deep and intense experiences this week, the first half of this week. I feel like things
are those already happening now.
Yeah, there we go. Well, the energy's already starting. Don't forget, they're moving into that position. But everything that we're interested in, we're going to be like super interested in. I've always been like this. My grandmother always said to me that being passionate was my strength and my weakness. So I have to be careful not to be even super passionate. But we're going to be really passionate and intense and deep about the things that we are interested in. We might want to get a deeper dive. We might want to do lots of research. It's actually a really good time to study anything esoteric. So things like studying astrology and studying tarot and those kind of things in this trine are really, really good, because you're going to go really deep, and there are things that you really need to go deep into. It's also really transformational. So you might find, those of you that are students and doing our courses and programs, that you get some big ahas, some big transformational moments for your studies this week. It's also a good time to get readings as well, like astrology and tarot readings, to do your own readings or get readings, because you've got it's kind of the energy that you might get some real depth there, some real depth, deep, meaningful and transformational information from these things. We might feel under this trine that we have power and influence over our own lives, which is a good thing. And you also might feel that, and that means we might get good transformations from having that kind of power over ourselves. But it also means that you might feel more able to exert power over others and influence others. So if you need to, like in any relationships, like say at work, or if like me, you've been trying to sell a house for 7 months, well, you need to exert a bit of power, this could be a good time to do that. But also be aware of other people, because of course we all know that this Pluto Scorpio energy can sometimes dig for your truth but not show its own. So you might want to be aware if you feel like other people are trying to get deep into you but hiding stuff from you. Be a little bit aware of that.
Yeah. So we did say at the beginning of this, and if you're just hopping on, I will say, I know that the banner says 5-17. We're a week behind on that banner. Mm-hmm. We are doing the astro forecast for 5-17, but we just said that there's lots of trines this week. So a trine in astrology, if people are like, what's that mean? A trine, real quick, is an aspect between planets. And a trine is one of those ones where there's a little bit more easy navigating than some other aspects. Right, Sarah? It's more of
Yeah, so the energy's flowing. That's why we've got this kind of like, so you're going to have like things you're interested in, and your creativity, because that's the sun, is going to be influenced by Pluto, which brings that depth and intensity, because the energy is flowing very well between them.
We're like mutually receptive to each other.
Yeah, very receptive to each other during this time.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have another trine as well on Monday, and this one's going to last through till Friday. And this is Venus trine Saturn. So this means that we know that Venus is the planet of desire. So we say love, but it's because we desire love. It's the planet also of finances and beautiful things and art and all that good stuff. So this means that this could be a time where long-term investments and commitments like can come to these relationships for all those things, not just for love. But if you were thinking of proposing a marriage, this could be a good week to do that.
I will say that hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers, knocking on wood. That's not real wood, Anna. But this week coming up might be a week that I find out more about my house buying endeavors. So maybe that's a good sign.
I hope so, 'cause I'm in the same situation as you, because we've been trying to sell a house for now 7 months. It's different in the UK. It's a different system, which I won't go into now, but it means that no one's committed to the sale until you exchange contracts, and that's after all the legal work, and people can drop out at any time. And there's been issues at the bottom of the chain. And actually, with some advice I've now said to my estate agents that they've got to complete by next Friday, or we have to find another buyer. So I'm in the same boat. I'm hoping that things will move this week. There are some other
desire for that process to be over.
There are other things that might help us. Yeah. There are some other things I was looking at thinking, but certainly Venus trine Saturn, stability, finding stability in relationships. So if you're in a relationship and there's been a few wobbles of late, you might find that you're able, especially because with Venus in Gemini, that you're able now to talk these things through. And with Saturn being in I'm going to say Uranus, Aquarius brain. Saturn being in Aquarius, I want to say Uranus, and Saturn being in Aquarius, it means that, that kind of talking through things and finding new ways of doing things, and then bringing stability and structure back into that relationship. So it's a good time to sit down and talk about things if you have had some wobbles, because with this Venus trine Saturn, it makes us kind of like face our responsibilities to our relationships and to those things, and just kind of like be a bit more respectful of each other. So it's a good time to have those kind of conversations and look at things logically. It's also great for creativity. We might have increased productivity in our creativity, which I really hope. I really need that. And with Saturn trine Venus, it kind of like we might be thinking a lot about the form and structures we're using. So if you're a writer, you might be thinking lots of like the sentences and the structures you're using. If you're an artist, you might be thinking, rather than just going and putting like experimentally putting like paint on paper, you might be thinking about creating art that fits a certain kind of known structural genre, so to speak. It's kind of like structures involved here. So yeah, if you're an artist, it's a good time to do all that kind of stuff. It's a good productive week for us. And also, like, because like I say, we're Saturn in Uranus in Aquarius, you might well find that usually with this trine you're going to be doing something quite kind of traditional, but you might be creating something that becomes a new tradition as well. It's a good week. It's a good week for love and art, and particularly where you need to bring structure into those things.
I like it. I like it a lot. Sounds, for as chaos as right now feels, that all sounds like really good things. So moving into the week, yes, it does. Moving into the week, it looks like we now have a square happening. So do we want to take a second? We've already explained that a trine is an easy, mutual kind of conversation between planets. They like each other, or planets and whatever planets, and then they are having fun together. They're in a triangle. They like each other. They like to work together. A square, not so much.
Yes, square is kind of like it's kind of like the energy is kind of like it's squaring with each other. It's like in a boxing ring, like at the beginning of a boxing match where you're kind of like squaring up to each other. It's kind of like that. And it's kind of interesting in squares because you kind of get the energy it's not like an opposition where the energy really is tugging and warring. It's there, but it's almost like to me it's almost like you get some good and bad from it. It's like you have to find that kind of balance between whether that, how you're using that energy. Like it can be kind of, you can use it either which way. It can like help you or not help you, so to speak. Yeah. And sometimes we talk about with squares that we square that energy up sort of like 4 times, and it might be that kind of like, say like we've got this, we'll talk about in a minute, the Sun square Jupiter. It might be that you kind of like, you take an opportunity and you blow it up too far, and you kind of realize that it didn't pay off because you didn't like commit, you know, you didn't put the commitment in, you just went off an opportunity and it wasn't right for you, it wasn't, you know, and then Jupiter's kind of won that square off. Or you might be kind of like, well, here's a good opportunity for you, which Jupiter brings you, but my ego is saying that's not right for me, I'm not, it's not kind of like, it doesn't feel right for me, I'm not going to take it. And then you're like, oh, I should have taken it. That's another square. So we kind of, each time these energies square up, it helps us to learn how to balance them.
Right. I was going to say something very ridiculous, like I do. I say ridiculous things that kind of make sense to people. It makes sense in my brain. And then sometimes it makes sense in other people's brains, because it's like standing in a ring, like when you're getting ready for like a boxing match. But in my head, it feels like a wrestling match. Oh my gosh, too much, sharing too much. Way back in the day when I was a wee one, my mother was in charge of pay-per-view on Comcast. So we always had to watch like the pay-per-view events to make sure that like they went through and there were no problems, or she would have to go to work. And so back in the day, I watched a lot of wrestling, and it became like my young childhood like obsession. But it makes me think of a bad like tag team match where there's like 2 people on one side and 2 people on the other side, and the choreography is like way bad until the last like 5 minutes of the fight, where they all get it together and there's like some amazing like choreography happening, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, that was so good, but really it wasn't that good up until like at the end, because they're all trying to figure it out. Because with a square, sometimes you might run into those bumps, right? Like run into those 4 corners of the square before you realize that you either made it or you didn't make it, but you run into those 4 corners. So in my head, I was watching, you know, somebody jump.
We don't have wrestling here. Wrestling's not such a thing that we don't have. It's not such a big thing over here, wrestling. So I would never think of it, but I like that. I do like that. That's really good.
So bad. That's I like it about me. Oh, like I was a huge, that's terrible, but I was a huge, at one point, wrestling fan.
Cool. We had sort of that ridiculous when everyone was all dressed up in big, like the show type of like wrestling we used to have, but not the real sport wrestling. It's not really that big over here at all.
No, Shawn Michaels in his heyday was like my favorite thing ever. I used to have VHS tapes of like his best matches ever. I digress in tangent, so ignore me and let's get back to astrology.
Yeah, cool. So we've got 2 squares coming up on Tuesday. So Sun squares Jupiter from Tuesday right through to the rest of the week. And so Jupiter is this planet of, we say luck and abundance, but the main reason that Jupiter is the planet of luck and abundance is because it shows us where our opportunities are, and it blows things up. Like Jupiter, that gas planet, it expands on things. So it expands on things that cause us abundance, but obviously it can expand on things as well that are not so helpful for us. So with the Sun square Jupiter, Sun is the center of ourselves, it's our ego, our confidence. So Jupiter's going to blow our confidence up, and that's good if we need our confidence blowing up. If there's some situations where you kind of like could do, your self-esteem's had a bit of a knock, and you could do with going in there with a feeling a little bit more like boosted, then that's a really good, it's going to be really, really good for you. But at the same time, our confidence can be overblown, which could make us kind of arrogant and cocky, or it could make us do things that are embarrassing. If you kind of imagine you're at a party and you're like, yeah, I'm going to dance on the tables, I'm going to like, I can do fame and all that, and then the next day you're like, oh my goodness. That's the kind of Jupiter Sun energy as well.
Talking about wrestling on a live
I like the wrestling talk. That's true. I love it.
I think this is a good insert too, because we're talking about the sun. And we talk about having that bolster of confidence and how that can be really good if you need it, but it can also be troublesome if it gets blown out of proportion. Yeah. So the sun in astrology generally is your ego, and people often hear that word ego and they're like, I don't have an ego. Like, I'm not an ego-driven person. But really, everybody has ego. It's whether or not it's inflated in a healthy way, or if it's, you know, or if it has no light on it at all, and then you have like lack of confidence, lack of drive, like lack of all sorts of things. So there's a shadow on both ends of the spectrum. There's a shadow when it's in the super dark, it's in shadow when it's in the super light, and your ego is all about finding that like happy center of, are you a plant that needs moderate light and to be watered from the bottom? And if so, you thrive and you grow. But if not, you're either going to wither away or, I don't know, overgrow into the next pot next to you, which is not helpful to that plant or yourself because you've taken up too much. So ego is important. So when you hear us talking about ego and your confidence, know that everybody has an ego. It's super important to have a healthy one, and everybody has one.
Exactly. And so with this, that's what you're saying. Like, it's good for us to focus that optimism. Because if we that all that, like, Jupiter's there blowing our egos up, blowing that optimism up. I mean, astrology as well, we talk about ego, like in terms of like Jungian personality. The ego is part of your personality. We have to have an ego. It's the part of our personality that we're aware of, the part of ourself that we're aware of, that conscious self, that is our ego. So if you focus that optimism and focus, you know, like, think about projects that you really need to be like channeling that optimism into, and that luck and abundance into, and channel Jupiter's energy. You can do that. That will help you kind of like, you know, just overblowing and overinflating things that perhaps you don't want, your ego in ways you don't want it to. But then be careful not to take on too much, because also under this we might all kind of think, oh yeah, I could do it, I could do that and that, which is something I'm really guilty of all the time. With a Sagittarius, such a Jupiter, like, I'm a Jupiter ruled chart, and I'm always like, yeah, I could do it all, and then just like, I'm chatting to my daughter this morning about the book I'm writing, and I have only got 2 weeks left. I'm like, I just need to do like 5,000 words a day now. She's like, every day. I'm like, yeah, fine. She's like, really? Like, yes, fine. Like, who needs sleep?
If I was told that I had to write 5,000 words a day, because I'm not like, I'm creative in a not like a writing sense. I'm creative in other ways. But if I got told that I had to write, like, this makes me think of all, like, when I was doing tarot readings, and at first I would do some written ones or even astrology ones, when I would like, try to get into a number like words for the like, your reading will be this many words. I would be checking the word count after every like 2 sentences. That would be so stressful for me. But for you, that's why astrology is so beautiful for you. That's like, yeah, I can do that. It's fine.
I'm the opposite. It's like, oh my goodness me, like, how do I? You've been like, Anna's been editing some of the things I've been writing for Sisters Enchanted this week. It's like, yeah, that's long. No, I'm just like, yeah, whoa, how many words already? So that's like where Jupiter, I have to be careful that Jupiter doesn't like let me just take on too much.
I'm always amazed that you can fit so many words on one page. I'm like, wow, how did she fit all this in here?
Yeah. I know. I just love it. Writing's my thing. I love it. So, but be careful not to overindulge during this time. Be careful not to overaccumulate with Jupiter in the sun. I mean, Jupiter square the sun. Sorry, you could like find that any indulgences we have, spending, like accumulating things, too much accumulation, spending things, addictions, anything we have like issues of addiction with, like watch that, because Jupiter could really blow those things up. And also remember that it's like, people think of Jupiter, yeah, it's luck, it's just luck's gonna fall on your lap, but it doesn't. Jupiter is about opportunity, not blind luck. So you've got to play a part in this as well. So it's a good week for hard focused work, and like putting that Jupiter energy, like seeing what the opportunities that you can take and putting the work into them.
Jupiter is a little wheel of fortune for me, like tarot wise, because like the wheel of fortune obviously can always turn out to be something amazing.
Yeah.
But it also depends on, like, did you set up for yourself for something amazing? Was it the right time to be like accepting of something amazing, you know, or, you know, was it your time to like learn something? Because Jupiter is also kind of, I see Jupiter a little bit as kind of like the teacher. A little bit, like not just like not like the teacher, but like the wise professor that's been doing it for a really long time. It isn't like actively teaching, but if you go to them and you're like, can you tell me a tidbit about this? Jupiter might be like, yes, let me tell you. But they're not like actively trying to teach the people, but they've got information if you're willing to accept it. So Jupiter to me is a little bit like super, yes, expansive and abundant, but it also depends, like, are you ready for that? Is it in a good position to make that happen for you? Yeah, I do see somebody, Tani in the comments is asking if we have a crystal suggestion for that. I will say, I don't know if Sarah, if you have one, I will say that when it comes to crystals, that I think that, like, if you're looking at your crystals and you're like, what can I do for Sun square Jupiter for this week? What crystal do I need? And if one jumps out at you, to use that one. Like, I'm a big advocate of, like, whatever one you want to use, whatever one is good for you. But as far as expansiveness, Jupiter, Sun, I would maybe even venture to say, if you really wanted to put like a name to a crystal, all of a sudden I'm just thinking kind of like carnelian, because carnelian kind of looks.
I was thinking carnelian. Yeah, I was thinking the same. I have a carnelian necklace. It's not on at the minute. And also I was going to say carnelian would be a good one, but it came to mind for me. But also one of the reasons it came to mind for me is because I need to channel this Jupiter into creative projects, and I think again you can use the crystal in what you want to channel the energy for. Like so carnelian's great for that creativity. If it was kind of like, say you really need to channel that Jupiter square Sun into financial abundance, you might want to use something like aventurine. You know, you could use a crystal that's relevant to where you're, like, when we say channel this, otherwise because it's a square, if you don't channel it, it might kind of like play out in like bumps in the corners.
So there's a million. Sorry, Sarah, I was interrupted. There's a million and one ways to go with that. I saw carnelian, but like you were saying, if you are somebody who feels like you might be in a position to get overconfident, or that your ego might be coming in, then maybe like a tourmaline, or you know, a hematite or obsidian, because you want to like block some of that ego. You know, so it's really, I mean, like, when it comes to crystals and working with the energy, it's all like what your intention is. And like I said, if I'm looking at my crystals and I'm like, how do I want to do this week? Like, how do I want to expand my creativity? And my carnelian doesn't jump out at me, and I don't know, the peacock or does, like, then I'm just gonna grab that crystal because I just picked it with that intention. And so there is really no wrong way.
Yeah, that's exactly. And also because this is going to be like, this energy is going to be around like for a while. It's going to be around for about a week. Like, so you know, if you're feeling like it's overwhelming, you're like, if you feel like, yeah, I am doing the like jumping on tables and like performing and being embarrassed next day, or I do realize I'm being a bit cocky at work right now, so you might then want to decide, okay, I'll go for the tourmaline. Whereas if you're like, you know what, I don't feel like I'm making enough of this, I don't think I'm making enough of the opportunities, I've got a creative project and it's got partway for the week, you might then want to, you know, you could use a different crystal each day depending on how you're feeling that energy, if you need to like shield some of it or if you want to expand on it. So
I used to carry a hematite with me every day with the crystal that I wanted to work with, because I always felt like I needed grounding also. And so I would always pair, I had like one piece of hematite and like whatever crystal that I wanted to work with, I would pair it with that one hematite, because it made me feel like I was like grounding it together.
That's a good idea. Yeah,
like, that's just me. So just whatever you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, have fun, but keep it in balance with this one. And also, like, if it could make you very generous as well, so just be careful if you're being very, very generous that you keep enough for yourself, because it could be really easy just to like, like I'm going to give you all of this, and it's like, I haven't got it in myself. So we have then we have another square on the same day. We have Mercury square Jupiter, and this is going to be around, Mercury square Neptune, and this is going to be around until June the 10th. So this is around for a while. It's around for the rest of the month. So this is interesting because, of course, you've got Neptune's energy, so like super creative, super kind of like daydreamy and imaginative and spiritual. But because when Mercury squares Neptune, and Mercury's that planet of thinking and communication and logic, it can make us all a bit like foggy in our thinking and in our communication, because remember, we're talking about a square, we're talking about bumping, the bumps in the energy coming along here. So you might find it's a bit disorientating, a bit of lacking clarity, and this is going to be a month, so be aware of that. Like this is why we've got to be careful, Anna, because like for legal matters, for buying, like for anything to do with contracts, so we're going to have like Mercury square Neptune and Mercury retrograde coming up. So contracts, it's really not, these aren't good times for contracts. So it's, if you have got to do something that important that really needs your mind to be clear, it's a good idea to get someone else to check it over with you, just so that two foggy minds can at least kind of come to some kind of like make sure that, yeah, definitely. And of course our communication might get foggy as well, which can lead to insecurities, because we all know when we miscommunicate with people, we can get insecurities or embarrassments because people think you've said something that you haven't. So just try and make sure during this period that you're thinking and like I don't, like that feels a bit, I'm not sure about that. If you feel like, did they really say that, then don't like let your imagination, because of the Neptune will drive your imagination to fill in the gaps.
Well, I say this often about Mercury and that idea of, you know, like in mythology, you're looking at Hermes there, that Mercury, especially in retrograde or when something like this is happening, when it's in Neptune, that you have like that game of telephone where you like whisper to the person next to you and then you go around in a circle and then that person has to say it out loud and you hear how distorted it got. So this might be a good time to be more like Hermes-esque when he's not being tricky, but to deliver information yourself.
Yes.
Like to take a very deep breath. If you're writing an email, write it, maybe look at it one more time. Or if you have to tell somebody something that you're not telling, like we're saying, if we're signing a contract that you're not telling like the third party about it, like you're going directly to the source. So this is a really good time probably to take a deep breath, take a notebook with you, write your clear thought down, and then say it yourself. Not leave a voicemail, maybe not leave, you know, something hanging in the air, but to be like really thorough with your communication.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, that's going to be so important during this. And also, once again, it's this creativity again, where we had creativity as a theme for the last few weeks, and it's like targeting that energy on creative projects as well, like because you can use like that imagination, like Neptune's fantastic for that imagination and dreaming and daydreaming, like, you know, utilize that, create with it as well. And again, be careful that you're not kind of like deceiving people or lying or being deceived to and lied to yourself, because imagination, so the communication, it can work two ways. Like Anna said, it can fill the gaps and make you imagine things that aren't what has been said, or but it can also make us kind of like imagine things and then like deceive people based on our own imaginations, not because we are being nasty, but just because our imagination has played up. So it's just going to be being careful, and it is going to be made even more foggy by the fact that Mercury is going to be in retrograde before this square is over. So, and that's up until June the 10th, this one.
All right.
Yeah.
Did we hit on Mercury opposition Venus?
Mercury opposite Venus, no. So this is good. This is something a little bit more lighthearted for us. So Mercury opposite Venus, it means there's a tug of war between that kind of like when planets are in oppositions, it's like literally, if you imagine a tug of war and pulling that rope, like both planets are kind of pulling against each other. But and again, we need to find this sort of balance between those two planets. So like this kind of like can make us quite relaxed and affectionate though, because if Venus is winning on that tug, it's like, imagine like you're kind of like, when you step over the line, that means that person's won if someone's pulled them over the line. So you've got these two planets kind of pulling each other over the line. So this can make us quite kind of like relaxed and affectionate and lighthearted. But then again, because it's an opposition, so there's always that kind of like shadow in that, because if the energy is kind of like blocked and it's not flowing in such a good way because of the tug, then it could be that you kind of come across as uncaring. Like you can imagine if someone says, I've got to talk to you about something really important, and you're just like, ha ha ha, yeah, brilliant, let's go and have some fun, let's go to the pub, like,
right,
you know, that kind of thing.
I can see that, especially with all the Mercury happenings.
Yes.
That that you might be, so aloof in your affections that when something really does need to be talked about, that you may just not seem to be open to actually having the communication, or that you're covering the communication in, silly affections instead of like actually, making sure you're communicating clearly or getting to the bottom of things. So I could see that as making jokes instead, especially if you're in a time where you are trying to get work done or important contract signed, that like somebody needing that stressful time with humor. Might be funny like in the moment, but then when you walk away in that fog, being like, wait, did that just happen? Did they mean to be silly like that? And then you might have that spiral of like the communication got lost, it got misconstrued, so
exactly.
My recommendation is for everybody to have a notebook this week and write down things.
Because it's important to remember that we talk about these things one by one, but they're all happening at the same time. So and exactly right. You kind of might have that, because that Mercury opposite Venus is going to be around for the rest of this week as well, from Tuesday. So you might then have that feed into your kind of Mercury square Neptune overactive imagination. So all this stuff kind of like influences each other. I think the overall kind of thing this week is just be creative and artistic and just keep it all kind of like flowing into that.
For sure.
And then the sun, of course, moves into Gemini on Thursday. So we're into Gemini season on Thursday. So that's a more Mercury, because that's Mercury's sign. So the sun and Mercury together there as well. So a lot of this kind of like Gemini loves all this experience and like loves to just share experience with everybody else and understand all the mysteries of the world. So lots and lots of communication, thinking, and all those kind of things are going to be coming our way through the sun as well.
So many things. And we've talked about too about Gemini. We just had a coffee chat. Well, not just now, a couple weeks ago. We had a coffee chat in our Expedition Astrology group, which was like a sit down with me and Sarah and Nick, the other astrologer here at the Sisters Enchanted. And we all kind of sat and talked about the zodiac signs. And we talked about Gemini. And then we'll go, because I know that me and you too, we have a meeting, and I'd like us to have a deep breath before that. But we were talking about Gemini and how Gemini is one of those signs, along with the planet Mercury, I would say too, that sometimes gets that kind of reputation for being a little bit chaotic or stirring the pot when it's not necessary. But we were talking about how Gemini really wants to communicate so much and learn so much about everything that it seems like there's chaos happening when they're really just trying to figure everybody out.
Understand the mysteries of the world and experience as much as they can. I see like Gemini, it is the butterfly that flies around because it just wants to experience everything. And so it does like to talk, and sometimes people think Gemini is a little bit scattered, but it's because it just wants to experience everything. It doesn't want to stay too long in one place, because it wants to experience the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I kind of like it. I like Gemini energy.
And it's like Mercury too, like going into retrograde, it wants to experience the hard. Like it wants to experience the communication and the travel, and then it wants to get stuck at an airport for 24 hours to 48 hours so that it has to experience a new town. Like it's kind of like, hey, let's go to retrograde and like halt everybody's lives, so that we have to experience this halt, this pivot in the road, like this detour. So it sounds like there are a lot of things happening.
There are,
and that our takeaways are to be really clear with our communication and our intention. Read everything twice, if not 3 times, with an extra eye on them. And that if you're feeling bogged down or feeling like you need to get a little silly instead of facing things head on, that maybe it's a good time to resort to some sort of creative outlet to clear your brain before tackling the situation at hand.
Absolutely.
There we go. So that's good. That is something to think about. And I will make sure, because I always meet every communication or every frustration with a little bit of humor. And I will make sure to I do disclose myself anyway. I'm always like, I know we are fighting, but I am making a joke. And I will laugh instead of crying. I'm going to start to laugh. I'm going to make sure that I caption myself first. Like, I'm not trying to. socially awkward and I'm going to laugh instead of feeling emotions. So I think that is good takeaways. Good takeaways. Yeah. Anything else to add, Sarah, for this?
That's it. So yeah, have a great week, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Bye-bye.